And a chairman Wontumi ekoko piemu ewo court na court okoko piemu no ense right now no ofri prison and a debiano okoko piemu ewo court ne Exim bank fraud case no abusua koso a enye asem ketwa kra na ene okoko piemu wo court no abusua asem bi asi ewo courtroom wo na asem right now the lawyer lawyer Appiah Kubi, counsel for Chairman Wontumi in the Exim bank case. Abusuya lawyer yi asan so atwe no ho. Withdraw ne ho de a free case mu asan so a hand over de ama lawyer Atta. Into case na happen here in a Tanonimrim Forest. Sorry, Samana boy case na a lawyer Appiah Kubi hand over to Atta no. Abusuya enne Exim bank fraud case no baby a case ne keka kono. Appiah Kubi a withdraw from case no ama sisi ano the tactical Atta ono and ababe replace chairman Wontumi ne lawyer ye friend no Appiah Kubi ano and ya project area to your screen no enchen ede amama no Atta replaces Appiah Kubi as Wontumi's counsel in Exim bank case. Act for extension of time to continue plea bargain negotiations. Inti abusuya Atta so case mo on the tactical man was answer abisa court no wa patch o say enka court no ema nemre na on fan steady case na che say plea bargain no negotiations na ekoso no omo entwe enko ekire mo yenko na yenko tie ensem bi so a deputy attorney general edit to dwa efa chairman Wontumi nsem na corruption cases ora ho ensem bebre na deputy attorney general edit to dwa yenko tie ba yede de aka beto am so unsubscribe ya subscribe na hit on the notification bell so na be any updates be a drop no onsa ewetumi akabia ha gossip politics TV so.
And thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, brother.
I hope you're well.
And good morning to your listeners. Yeah, I'm well. I'm well.
Well, it's been quite a while. I guess I haven't spoken to you since you became Deputy Attorney General.
Oh, no, we've spoken several times. Oh. Yeah.
But first, let me start first by asking you what this judgment means to your office, because there are many other cases you are pursuing. You seem to have done this in some form of record time. Exactly, how did you achieve this?
Yes. So we called our first prosecution witness on January 13th this year. So roughly, if you take out the delay and all the change of lawyers and everything, the case ran for about 5 months. Yeah, and for us, it is a test of our strategy to, the office has devised new strategies. Not new, but there are strategies that are there, but we try to cut down on the number of charges, the number of accused persons, the number of witnesses to achieve efficiency. So what we try to do is we do what we call economic analysis of law. In other words, how much resources do you put in and what do you get? We try to put in as little resources as possible and to get the highest possible output. So that is what we deployed. And for us, I think it's about efficiency in prosecution and in investigations. Yeah. But first, let me take this opportunity to thank the Inspector General of Police and the Director of CID. They were the people who carried out this particular investigation. We worked with several investigative agencies. This particular one was done by the police, and they put in a lot of work and a lot of resources to ensure that this happens. And after that, Minerals Commission, they were the ones who provided us with data on who has been authorized to do what within the mining sector. They also supplied us with a witness their legal officer who testified and provided the court with as an expert witness on law, mining law, and minerals administration. And then our own hardworking state attorneys. Those are young persons who have demonstrated extreme sense of commitment to their work, without which we couldn't achieve this particular outcome. And we continue to work with these people to get the result that we are getting.
I see. That's interesting. Generally, you are done with this, but for the delays, you have been done far earlier.
Yes.
A few things have. Were you clear in your mind that you had a strong case to get him convicted on this matter?
Oh yes, we had a very strong case. We believe in the strength of the case, and it became even more efficient and easier when the two accused persons approached us to be given a plea bargain. So they made a proposal, and we agreed that in order for them to be converted to prosecution witnesses, they would forfeit their galamsey equipment, as excavators, the gold that the police, arrested them with monies and other properties of theirs. So that was the plea arrangement we reached with them. In addition to that, they were prepared to testify for us. So even though our case was ready before they took advantage of the plea arrangement, they made it quite easy for us to show that this is that the accused persons are guilty.
In fact, the minority, the MPP, have been accusing you of engaging in selective justice. That when it comes to Chairman Wontumi, you are quick to move. When it comes to other cases, including two investigations that were referred to Iyoko, which is directly under you, you are moving slowly, or you are not even interested. How do you respond to that?
That clearly is either a misunderstanding of how things are done in terms of law enforcement, or pure mischief. Wontumi's investigation started in 2021 when they were in office. He was only convicted last week. 2 days ago. What it tells you is that if it's anything to go by, then investigations take time to be concluded. This particular directive that my boss, the Attorney General, gave, was given somewhere, I think July or August last year. So if they are comparing the speed with that, which is just about a year, as against Wontumi, who has been under investigation for 5 years, then clearly they cannot, in any sense of the word, talk about partial treatment based on delays, But we understand that investigations do take time, and so we are still investigating the complaint, that the directive that my boss, the Attorney General, gave to Yoko.
I see. Then the other one is, and this is a criticism of the judgment, that they realize that the corporate veil, the way in which the judge pierced the corporate veil, that's what they say, that the judge treated the company and the man as if they were one in the same. They said the judge dissolved the company to convict him and then reassemble it to convict the company. What do you make of this commentary on the judgment, that the position they've taken?
So, again, that position exhibits some level of misunderstanding of the law. Generally, even without lifting the corporate veil, okay, when a company commits a crime. So first of all, let's agree that companies can commit a crime. So that is the position of the law. It is not doubtful. Nobody can question the fact that companies as corporate bodies can commit a crime or can be found guilty of committing a crime. Once we agree to that, then the question is, when a company commits a crime, the company is not a human being. It doesn't have hands, it doesn't have brain, it has nothing. So the company runs on the brains and the hands of its directors, board of directors. So if a company commits a crime, naturally the directors who get punished for the crime, because you cannot imprison a company, you know. So the directors are the ones who are punished. So even without lifting the corporate view, it would be clear that once the company is found to have committed a crime, the director, which is Wontumi, would have been, that is, even if there's a proper corporate governance structure in place with a proper board of directors, with structures and rules, the directors, which are the two accused, human accused persons, would still have been guilty anyways. But the judge made a very significant point by saying that in this particular case, even there was no proper governance in place. So, for example, when I cross-examined A1, that's Chairman Wontumi, one of the questions I asked him, the first question I asked him was where his colleague director, Kwame Entry was. And he told the court that Kwame Entry, the last time he saw him was in 2021 or 2022. He got he decided to relocate out of the country. So he is the only person who has been running the company from at least 2021 to date. Now, the crime we are dealing with occurred within 2024, 2025. So clearly, at the time the crime was committed, there was no board of directors. And when you listen to the testimony of both Wontumi and our prosecution witnesses, they made it clear to the court that every dealing that they had was informal conversation between Wontumi and Okum, that's PW2. So clearly, it shows that even though there was supposed to be a company in place which is supposed to own a concession, it was really Wontumi who was running the show personally. So that's what the judge meant by saying that the nature and the manner in which the company was run, it appears the company was just a front to acquire the concession, and then the human being took over and did all the wrong things that he's been accused of. So in that case, there's a concept in law called lifting the corporate veil. Okay. You lift the veil when you realize that the company, it was not really a company, but was just a front to a human activity. And now, the law is not an ass, as we often see, because the law knows that if you, without the concept of lifting the veil, a lot of people will just form companies to commit crimes and go scot-free and say, well, it's a company. So the law provides exception to the rule of separate corporate identity or personality. I think that is what the judge was trying to explain in the judgment.
So evidence was clearly laid that demonstrated that he had the final say on everything.
Oh yeah, he had the first and final, not just the final, but he was the first and the final say on everything.
Then there's also the one about the judge sidestepping a request for constitutional interpretation. What do you say to that?
Well, so we know that when the only court that has power to interpret the Constitution is the Supreme Court. So that's the first point. The second point is that sometimes when you are conducting a trial or a case in a lower court, there may be issues of constitutional interpretation that may come up. The Constitution says that because it is only the Supreme Court which would interpret the Constitution, whenever a constitutional issue for interpretation arises in a case in any other court apart from the Supreme Court, that court ought to stay the proceedings and refer the question of constitutional interpretation to the Supreme Court. Then the Supreme Court will do the interpretation and hand over the meaning back to the court to continue. Now, that is the position of the law. The law also goes on to say that it is not every time that somebody in the case raises a so-called constitutional issue that a judge ought to say. Again, the law is not an as we often say, because the law knows that when you are going through a trial in a lower court, one of the ways to delay the trial is to often raise constitutional questions, because once you raise the question and it is valid, the court ought to stay proceedings and it will go to the Supreme Court, which takes months to revert the answer to the court below. So the law gives the trial judges a discretion to determine whether the question, the alleged question of constitutional interpretation being raised is real or genuine. What this means is that it is not every time that someone says there is a constitutional issue that a judge ought to say. The judge ought to examine the issues and determine that, yes, this question is real and is genuine, and then he will stay proceedings and refer. Now, back to this case. What the judge simply did was that she examined the so-called constitutional questions that the accused persons were trying to raise and concluded that there was the so-called constitutional question was not real nor genuine. It was just an attempt to, stay the court hand and buy more time, which they have done in the past. Now, this constitution issue that the accused person raised, first they raised it in their final address, which we responded. And the position of the law, which I explained earlier, was what we used, or we responded, we used as a response to their answer. Then when they realized that they really made a mistake by making it part of their written address, then they followed up with a formal motion, which is even itself not what it's supposed to be. Because the law says that in the course of the proceedings, when the issues come up, so usually what we do is it is after pleadings have closed, and then you raise it as not a motion necessarily. So, but long and short, for the benefit of our listeners and not being too legal this morning, the court simply said that there was no real or genuine question of interpretation placed before her to warrant her staying the proceedings and referring to the Supreme Court. So that was dismissed, and then the court went ahead and gave a judgment. And let me add this, that, the lawyer for the accused was himself absent on the day. And yesterday, I understand that the reason for his absence was that he wanted to be present at his daughter's graduation and therefore could not be present. Then he wrote a letter to the court indicating that he had to travel because of a prior arrangement he had made before the 20th date. In other words, at the day we were taking the 20th as the judgment day, which he was in court and agreed to, he had a prior, engagement of attending his daughter's graduation in the UK. But the judge said that excuse is untenable in the sense that it was a different thing if he wasn't in the court and the court imposed the 20th day on him. But he was in the court when the court took the 20th days, and in fact, he was the one who proposed. You recall that he was the one who applied for the adjournment, for the deferment of the judgment. So the adjournment was taken at his instance. And so if he knew at the time that he had a prior engagement, why didn't he inform the court and have to wait until the day before, the last working day before the judgment, before he put that in? So the judge again said the excuse of absence was not legitimate, especially the reason he gave. And further, the day's business was for judgment. And once he sent his juniors there, it means that he was represented, and because on the day of judgment, no lawyer has any more business to actually conduct. So the judge went ahead and then gave the judgment.
But the minority says that that's a denial of his constitutional right to a counsel of choice.
Again, that is a total misunderstanding of the law, because the man had a lawyer, and the lawyer decided that he has other more important things to do than to appear in court, and he chose not to come. How is that denial of counsel of one's choice? In fact, the case is even evidence that an accused person can even change his lawyer even after trial. So this case is like an authority for the proposition that even after trial, an accused person in pursuance of his right to counsel of his choice can, for no reason, just decide that I want a new lawyer to listen to the judgments of the court. And that was even granted. So if anything at all, this case is evidence that you can even exercise the right to counsel even at the after trial.
Did that take you by surprise?
I wasn't surprised because, you see, the nature this case was conducted, nothing was becoming a surprise anymore. I mean, this is a case where an accused person has called usually, before we start trial, you provide all your witness statements, okay, before we start. This accused person, when it came to his time to call witnesses, he chose to call the witnesses piece by piece, as in piecemeal. So he will file witness statement for one witness, and then after cross-examination, then we'll file another one. So, which was completely not proper according to the rules of trial. But the court, was magnanimous to indulge him and respected his right as an accused person. And then in one instance, he even filed, after we started cross-examining one of his witnesses, midway, he filed a supplementary witness statement. After listening to our cross-examination, he now filed a new witness statement for the same witness. And when that happened, the court indulged him again and allowed him to try to stop, do CMC, and restart our cross-examination all over again. So with all these tactics and all these misnomers or missteps, we were no longer surprised with anything that was coming in the case, but we were just focused and knowing that no matter how long the night, the day would come.
You seem to have a lot on your hand, though. But this particular matter, because they still insist on the fact that there's a need to interpret Section 14.1, Section 92B of Act 703. If this goes to appeal, will your case stand the scrutiny of an appeal?
I have no doubt in my mind that no appeal will succeed against this because, especially the ones that they are referring, the issues they are mentioning. First of all, we don't think that there's any genuine or real question for interpretation to be referred to. And in any case, even if there were, the test for an appeal succeeding is not that there was even an error, is that the error occasioned a substantial miscarriage of justice. So to be honest with you, I don't see any meaningful or any chance of success of any of the grounds of appeal that they have been raising. A lot of the things they have been saying are either not borne out of the facts that they have, or neither is it in accordance with law.
Before I let you go, 2 updates. One, Kobna Edubohang said you'll be wrapping up your case this week. Is that accurate?
Yes. So hopefully we will sit tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we should be able to close the case. But with these trials, nothing surprises us anymore. They really stretch us when it comes to the delays. So, and because the accused persons, courts are very careful how they treat them. So, but all things being equal, I expect that tomorrow we should finish, that we can make progress. And let me take this opportunity to make this.
Hello?
Yeah, I think give a bit of clarification.
Okay.
Over the weekend, there was an issue where Governor Dubain's people were saying that because we answered a request that we do not have any information on the source of some money, then it means that we didn't have evidence. And I think that our listeners are entitled to this explanation. So this accused person is charged with stealing money from stealing government money, and the mode of stealing the government money was to take the money from a government bank account into his private, bank account. Now he filed a request for disclosure, saying that we should provide him with a source of the money, that is where the money came from before entering the government account. Our response was simply that is irrelevant, because once any money which is in government account is government money, and you cannot just take it and say, even if it is your own money or it is tax money or it is from loan from international or whatever, once it's in government account, you cannot take it out unless you follow proper procedures of taking the money out. So it is inconsequential, and indeed, it did not. That information, because it was irrelevant to us, we didn't even bother. And it wasn't part of the investigations that we conducted, and it didn't come into our hands. Then these people are all over the social media saying that because we do not know where the money came from before entering the government account, we cannot say that a person who has actually taken the money into his private account has stolen the money, which doesn't make sense. But then again, it is one of the instances of people not understanding the case that is brought against them, and they do what they like, and eventually when they are convicted, then they say it's political witch hunt. Look, if you put money into my account, you cannot come and just take it and say because you put it there. And here he has not even said that he has put the money there anyway, but the question was completely irrelevant. And if you look at this particular accused person, his lines of defense has been changing over time. You remember initially his explanation was that the 49 million was used to sponsor politicians during the campaign period.
Yes.
And they even published a list of how they distributed the money.
Yes.
Now, then another defense that they have tried to mount is that the money was a loan which he has given to the state agency, and that he was taking it back. Then another point, they said they actually bought the equipment, and they kept changing. And my point is, and these changes are all contradictory. If indeed you use the money to buy the equipment, then the issue of loan doesn't arise, because then it is legitimate purchase. Again, if it is loan that you have given to the company, then why do you use the government, that loan to buy something for the government? And again, so all these explanations that they have been trying to put across were all not, in line with they were all contradictory and didn't offer any defense. So for me, that case, so far we've not encountered any real defense, and we hope that it will continue that way.
I see. Let me conclude then by asking whether there's been any further update on the negotiations, the Exim Bank matter, because you indicated that no agreement had been reached.
Yes,
has the situation changed?
Yeah, we've not reached any settlement. The time given to us is running out. We were supposed to meet on Monday to conclude, but you know what happened on Monday, so we couldn't conclude. We hope that we'll find time this week or early next week to conclude our negotiation.
Okay, and then you report back to the court.
Yes, we report back to the court. We're supposed to report back to the court next week.
So abusua we ne ensema ekọ so our political highway. So chairman Wontumi council and the Appiah Kubi was also a withdraw a hand over case to the tactical Atta. I better want say some of Japan Kokotisa and some way at my aha gossip politics TV so.